Welcome to the Business of Family Conversations and Circles series podcast, where we hold important conversations with experts on family enterprises. Family businesses contribute to 90% of Africa's GDP. In addition to being wealth and employment generators, family enterprises are also unique in that they are owned or managed by families. The interplay between the family, ownership, and enterprise systems is what we talk about in the Business of Family Conversations and Circles series podcast. I am your host, Wanjami Chuki, a family enterprise coach, consultant, and advisor, and I am delighted to welcome you to today's episode. Please share, subscribe to this channel, and to our website at www.bbold.co.ke and give us your feedback on what resonated the most with you. Welcome to the Business of Family Conversations and Circles series podcast. In the next 8 episodes, including today's, we will be delving into the interdependence and family systems theories that form the basis of a lot of the work that we do as coaches. My name is Wanjami Chuki, and I'm the host of today's session. And in session with me is my colleague, Carolyn Gaiduma, who is a family systems coach and expert. Carol, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm really happy we're doing this.
Yes, it's exciting. It's really exciting.
So today's session is going to be about acute and chronic anxiety in the family system, and just getting an understanding of how this plays such a massive role in families, yet it's something that's rarely talked about.
Yeah.
So just to get us started, where does it emanate from? Where does acute or chronic anxiety find itself in the family system?
So for me, it's always hard dealing with the beginning of families. So do I begin with the kids or do I begin with the adults? Because the adults were once kids. So let me start with the two people who started family.
Yeah.
They're coming from families of, their own biological families. And they have come in with different dynamics from that setup. They have come in with certain behaviors. They have come in with certain attitudes about life, about each other, So in relating, they create certain dynamics in their relationship. Now these dynamics, because of course intimate relationships are difficult, they're intense, and given that most people are coming from dysfunctional families, so you've carried in your dysfunction, so you come and you clash. And here you have children who are experiencing this. Now in the family, the primary goal of a family is to protect the children, to provide for the children, and to be present for the children. And so this might not happen to these children because of the dynamic of the relationship of these two parents. So there might be no presence, probably no protection, probably no provision. And so the child, because the child is about surviving, these people are like my gods. I have to survive. If they don't feed me, I'll die. If they're not here, I'll die. If they don't protect me, I'll die.
But you also have these situations where, anybody looking in from the outside would think that this is a perfect setup.
Yeah.
Children are provided for.
Yeah.
You've got a roof over your head, food, great schools.
Yeah.
You've got, you could even have a parent who's a housewife.
Yeah.
So is there a deeper layer to this, that we're not just talking about surface level presence, surface level provision, protection?
Yeah, there is. Because now a lot of people now have gone into child psychology and they understand what are the real needs of a child. When we went to school, we were taught basic needs: food, shelter, clothing, and then we added education. And for most people, actually, that's all they provide for their children. But when we talk about presence, it's not about just physical presence. It's about emotional presence. It's about mental presence. It's about being, with the child. Because a lot of us are physically with the child, but we are not mentally with the child.
Well, a lot of times also you see parents who aren't also even mentally with themselves.
Exactly.
They're not even, even in terms of emotional states.
Yeah.
That you may have spouses who are using substances.
Yes.
And sort of physically present,
yeah.
but not.
They are not there.
Fully present.
Exactly.
How does that play out? Like, how does that then? How does that affect the children?
Interpret it as I am not seen, because they can see clearly you're not responding to them.
Yeah.
You're responding to something in your head, in your mind. So probably your own stories, your own anxieties, and you're just projecting. And you're not hearing them, you're not seeing them. So they don't feel seen. And that makes them behave a certain way or be a certain way to try and get you to see them. So they learn certain behaviors and certain emotions and ways of being to be seen, and that's what they carry into their life.
Yeah, I think that also for kids, because you don't have the language. Children don't have the language to necessarily be very clear about what they're dealing with inside. And parents then, the role and the responsibility of parents, maybe even other caretakers, older siblings, is to help, to be able to identify with what a child might be going through and to help them articulate it, talk it through.
Exactly. That's why presence is so important.
Yeah.
Because how will you know if you're not present?
Yeah.
And that's why we project a lot, because one, we are not present, two, we don't know. So we make assumptions and we speak for the child. You see?
Yeah.
If a child is throwing a tantrum in a supermarket, you automatically think they are angry, and then you respond to that anger that they don't even have probably. Probably their experience is different, but because you're not present to them, you might not even have an understanding of what that experience might be, and the child knows you don't.
Right.
And then they become deficient in that way, and they leave the rest of their life in that deficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also in contemporary life, because as we move along in time, the stresses of life seem to get more and more to amplify.
Yeah.
Whether it's, the cost of living going up, or these political systems that we live in that are quite chaotic.
Yeah.
People sort of having to keep up with others, the Joneses, the whole comparison thing.
Yeah.
Life can be pretty stressful.
Yeah.
So when you have parents out there, and as we're talking about family enterprises, you're building this thing called a family enterprise, family businesses and what have you. Why is it that families don't take into account that stress can also be brought into the family system and then contribute to the dysfunction of it?
It's because, first of all, we lack awareness about what is really influencing us.
Yeah.
If you look at most people and what they think their problem is, half of the people think their problem is outside of themselves.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that awareness that there's something happening in our subconscious mind that's actually deciding which thoughts we think, which emotions we feel, and which actions we take.
Yeah.
Because of that lack of awareness, then we actually do not know now to what extent external circumstances are affecting us.
Right.
So that awareness is what really needs to be built, because if you have that awareness, you'll be able to see that to this extent, my experience outside of this family is affecting me. And then another thing I like to say about families is that all the members of the family are under the same emotional skin. So whether you're miles away, whether you're dead, you're still an influence in your family.
Yeah, that's so completely true.
Yeah.
And I think even in having this conversation, the whole point of it is that a family is supposed to be a nurturing pod.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a space where people experience caring, love, and because of the behavioral and communication patterns that stem out of anxiety, you find that they can be the most threatening spaces.
Yeah. Yeah. The very reason of their existence is the reason of why they are the most threatening. Because if a human being comes into this planet and is in that space for nurturing, which means that their ultimate survival depends on that unit, then it means it's highly critical, like it's a critical environment, it's a matter of life and death. Everything that happens in that family is a matter of life and death for that child.
Yeah.
And that's why it's the way it is. That's why it has a lot of anxiety, because a child comes in and the first face that looks at them, they want to be sure that this face is not gonna kill me.
Yeah.
And so everyone in that family is about survival, and it's about wanting confirmation that I am fine, that I will thrive, that I will, survive. And when we don't get that, it's like we become obsessive about it. Like I want you to confirm to me. So even we don't even recognize we've grown, we are growing. No, we don't, because we are still stuck in that cycle of I need you specifically to tell me that I am fine. And so we live our life, and when that person, or we outgrow the family and we move out, that person still exists for us in our psyche. And so if we see them in different people, and we keep looking for that approval, that acceptance from that person. And so it's it's really obvious why that space would be this level of anxiety. And I say we can't avoid that. We can't avoid that. The two things that we can do is, one, develop as much awareness as possible to what extent our family setups have influenced our state of being, who we are.
Well,
that awareness.
Are we even allowed to do that? I mean, I feel that, or maybe the question I should ask is, how do we go about doing that? Because culturally, like if we take the context of our Kenyan African culture, if you were to start interrogating the anxiety in your life, you would have to go back. Definitely. That means that you'd have to look at the states of anxiety from our parents' generation and possibly what has gone on before. And I think for us Africans, one commonality that we have across this continent is colonialism and the anxiety that came out of colonial trauma. People had to survive, literally. Properties were being seized. You're thrown off of your land, suddenly you're an indentured person. And you've been free. You're up until then, your culture and your customs are being replaced. All in a lifetime. I mean, that is so intense. But we don't discuss this and the impact that this has on our lives today. How do we begin this process?
I think it's a step by step. So we've come a long way from there. But then have we really? We haven't. We're still stuck there. But the only way for us to go back there and recover ourselves is to start from where we are right now. They say the truth will set you free. So we need to start telling ourselves the truth about our life right now, so that you are able and you're free to tell yourself the truth about your family, right? Because there's so many things we have learned to unsee within our family setups. And it's not even about talking about it. It's actually seeing things as they are, because we have so many fantasies and so many stories about our families. And this layer the truth. But when we remove them and we see that actually this is what was really going on, then that will begin to bring you closer to yourself. I see
Without judgment or blame.
That's
the whole idea.
Yeah, just non-judgmental observation, just look. And what I like to tell people is, when you're an adult, you can rationalize a lot because you can understand. You've had your own experiences, you can understand your mom's pain, your dad's experiences. It's fine. But for you to build the awareness about yourself, go back to your perspective as a child. What were you looking at? What were you seeing? What conclusions were you drawing at that time? So that you can understand, this is how I set my mind up.
Yeah. So like, we just both celebrated our birthdays.
Yeah.
And it's great because we're on the opposite sides of the age spectrum in our families.
Yeah.
You having been a firstborn, me being a lastborn.
Yeah.
What was your experience as a firstborn like? Because sibling position for families that have more than one child also matter in all of this.
Definitely.
What was that like?
So being a firstborn was, the good side was that I was really celebrated. I was really like the star. In fact, my mom called me my star child the other day, wishing me a happy birthday. Because I was the first fruit of her womb, basically. So they were proud of me. The whole family was like, oh, So that's the good side. But then it also has a negative side because the expectations were really high. So it's like, now we have started you here. So please stay there and take it higher if possible. And there's this unspoken and sometimes spoken expectations about you're the firstborn, you can't do this as a firstborn. These are the ones that are following you, these are looking at you. So that level of expectation. The other one was about responsibility. As a firstborn, a lot was put on my plate that sometimes was beyond me, like it wasn't age-appropriate responsibility.
Yeah.
And so when I look at it in relation to anxiety, my anxieties were around performance. Am I going to be at my parents' level of expectation? Or are they going to say I let them down? That's one. Number two was about, am I doing it in the way that they expect me to do it? So that learned thing became sort of like a perfectionism for me.
And I suppose also being a caretaker, like being responsible also for your siblings as the oldest person.
Yeah. So I would harass them. In fact, my sister tells me, you traumatized me. When are you paying me for that trauma,
Yeah.
Because I would not let them play. Because if they play, their clothes are going to get dirty and I'm going to get a beating. And so I used to be like, I also learned how to be, it's almost as if my mind was always trying to get out of trouble. So I'm trying to do the best so that I'm not in trouble. So I'm not doing the best because that's my potential.
Right.
I'm not doing the best because I love it and I'm exploring this thing and I want to do my best. No, it was about, I don't want to be in trouble. I don't want to let them down.
So it's almost like striving for perfectionism.
Exactly.
And that is also, that is just, even the thought of it, even just saying it, is anxiety inducing.
A lot of anxiety. Because again, it's for survival. It's not for, it's not like an excellence, a spirit of excellence born out of the need to thrive.
I remember when I was a kid and something in particular that sticks with me in terms of anxiety, if my mother came home late, I would hang onto her coattails, her skirt, literally. If she walked into the house, in fact, I would meet her. I'd run out, I'd hear the car and meet her, right? So if she came home late, my anxiety would be on a whole other level. And when I think about it, it's interesting that no one picked that up. That even in a situation like that, no one could see how anxious I was about where is she. It's late. She's coming home late or later than usual. I mean, this could be 6:30, which would be late for me, So this is what our work is about, creating awareness for people on their emotional states. And there's a huge part of emotional intelligence here because as I think about the question I've just asked, I know that if people couldn't pick up on those emotions inside of themselves, they wouldn't be able to see,
especially in a child, because we tend to have this subconscious thing that kids don't have this kind of struggles. Like, how many Africans, especially, have you had saying, "Oh, my child has anxiety"? You'd be looked at like, those are Zoom problems.
Yeah.
But that's where it starts. Like, that's exactly where it starts. So you become so used to this anxiety that your brain picks it up as the norm. And so you grow up as an adult recreating it. So you set yourself up to experience the same anxiety. So even with your choice of job, if you're given 2 jobs, your subconscious mind will pick the one that has most anxiety. Because that's what you're used to.
Yeah.
And that's really what I would like people to see, that your problems and your challenges right now as an adult stem from what you are used to being in as far as emotions are concerned.
And I think people also need to realize that this is not a judgment on the system that you came from, because we're human. But it's an opportunity, once coming into an awareness around anxiety and other emotional states as well. Then you can then act on it. You know, you can sort of look at where it has come from, and act on it, so that you're not passing it on to the next generation, which is the very likely outcome.
Very likely.
Inescapable.
Exactly. And another thing that is really important for people to know is that you might have anxiety and you're not even aware that you have anxiety. Most of the people, I didn't know that I had anxiety until I got an anxiety attack. And the anxiety, looking back, was just moments of fear, fear around stuff, like fear around not being in control, like something doesn't go my way and I'm just panicking, like it's an overreaction. I can feel my body's almost not functioning. For some people, it can be repeated stuff, like I'm leaving the house, I need to check everything, I close the door, then I go back again, like what they call OCD, over cleaning, all these things are stuff that can tell you there's something happening. When you find yourself fidgety, you can't, whatever, addictions, all these things are ways that you can tell that you have anxiety.
Well, I know now, because of all the work that I've done, and even what we do with our clients at Be Bold, is that you really got to be present in the moment to moment, and being aware of what's happening inside of you, including how some of this stuff manifests in the body physically. It could be that your tummy, it could be feeling nauseous, it could be a headache, whatever it is. And again, most people aren't. Like, what I've noticed, even with clients, is that as it's coming up, as that anxiety awareness is coming up, they're ready to bolt with busyness, getting busy, finding distractions, stories, delving into stories, and because it's uncomfortable for them, it takes getting used to being able to sit with anxiety as it's rising, but it's also very satisfying when you can see it for what it is, and know that it's just a reaction to an experience. It's not who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And I love what you said, because it really sort of like gives a proper understanding of what is happening in family systems. Because in families, when somebody in the family is going through something in life, an illness, a relocation, a marriage, even something good can actually cause a dysfunction in the family, because it's not normal. So that anxiety puts people in certain roles because everyone can feel it. Everyone can feel the discomfort because you're under the same emotional skin. And so the different family members respond to that anxiety differently.
Yeah.
But then they do that, it's supposed to be a temporary solution so
Yeah.
that the person can deal with their stuff so that we can all go back to being who we are.
Yeah.
But then what happens is we take on the roles and the person doesn't deal with the anxiety, and most likely at the very beginning it's the parents because of their relationship dynamic. So they don't deal with it, and so the children are stuck in those roles, trying to manage the anxiety. And because they are children, they form identities around it.
Right.
And it becomes their state of being. So if you're the hero, you probably escaped that anxiety through wanting to save. So your response was, I am going to save the situation by doing 1, 2, 3. Somebody else decided I am going to diffuse this anxiety by cracking a joke, and they became the mascot, and now they're the mascot for life.
The comic.
The comic. Another one decided this is too much, I'm just gonna pull out, and I don't want to be involved, I don't want to rock the boat, and they just faded into the background. That's a lost child.
And what about the scapegoat, who actually then, it's that anxiety is properly projected onto that one child?
Yeah.
How does this get resolved? Because I think that is the most destructive. Although you also have the identified patient, maybe all the roles, but
But then the scapegoat, what happens is, to begin with, at the very beginning, they want the issue to be dealt with. And so they create something to direct the attention towards the issue. And then somebody decides, I'm not going to deal with this, I'm going to deal with you.
Yeah.
And that's how they become the scapegoat, because they have done something that's directing the attention towards the issue.
Real problem.
Yes, but then now somebody decides to make that the problem. Now the identified patient or the addict is the one who actually embodies the issue. It's like they act it out. They feel so much, they feel the anxiety so much. They become a living embodiment of it. And because it's so painful, they medicate in one way or another. They get sick, they become addicted, all these things. And so everyone in the family now is dealing with that same anxiety, but the real thing that is causing the anxiety has not been sorted out. And so, as you're saying, when we begin to heal ourselves and to learn how to deal and to be present with ourselves in our bodies, to deal with our issues, we reduce the dysfunctions in our own families, the ones that we go to start.
Yeah.
Because once an issue shows up, we are not running, we are dealing with it. But then what happens is we go to start our families in these roles that we took in our biological families. So that's where we must start. We must start with healing ourselves by becoming aware of what role, how have I been dealing with my anxiety, where is my anxiety coming from? So that awareness helps you to learn how to go within, be present, let go, heal, and then start from a clean slate.
Yeah, and I think that in the work that we're doing as well, when we're looking at multi-generational family systems, and working with families to create legacies that every member of the family is truly proud of. And this is work that goes from generation to generation, so getting better and better, because you may find that you'd have to wait until the next system, or the next generation, to work on a particular aspect of the family's communication and behavioral patterns. This is where we work on the family vision. What kind of a family do you see yourself as being? How do you have to be inside of the family to be that? How are you going to do it? How are you going to get there? As opposed to, looking at family enterprise families as just families that are all about a business or money. It is also about restoring the emotional health of this unit, of this emotional unit, and being able to address dysfunction without shame, without avoidance, you know. And I was also thinking about something that anxiety is the root cause, but its expression can take many forms.
Yes.
Violence is a form. You know, what are the other ways so that people can see this is playing out in our family, and this is likely to be connected to anxiety, so that they know that they can trace it back to look at where's this anxiety stemming from.
It's really some of this violence, this addiction, even narcissism is a response from that, being steeped in that level of anxiety as a child, that you totally disconnect from your emotional self. Another thing is, I don't know how to call it, but it's this sense of victimhood. You know, there are people who are victims and they propagate victimhood in their life, and they're forever a victim of so many, everything. You know, victims of life. That's a way of dealing with, you know, depression is a way of dealing with anxiety, or is an embodiment of the anxiety. Even physical illness. Physical illnesses that people have, some of them are manifestation of that anxiety.
And also, again, dealing with family enterprises, we deal with succession, people going through the succession process. Succession processes are typically triggered by someone dying or somebody becoming really sick. And these are also sources of anxiety that tend to go unnoticed, you know. So I also find that society will not necessarily provide the support that somebody going through a process like that needs. People having children. Now women will talk about this, about how challenging they find it to suddenly be responsible for you know, a baby's life and all of the demands. You're not getting enough sleep, maybe, or these are all happy events. Well, not all. When people die, it's a source of grief. But having children, getting married, these major life changes. But anxiety is typically not connected to them.
To those,
you know.
Exactly. And even on a more subtle level is just people making their own life decisions. Like somebody just deciding, I'm going to relocate, or somebody deciding, I'm going to move from this religion to this religion, or somebody deciding, I'm going to get married to this person in this community or in this gender, or it's those normal life things that create a lot of anxiety because of our family dynamics and our family's unspoken rules. You know? And even just stuff that people go through in life in general cause anxiety. I have this experience I had of my dad has not been well for a while, and I remember one day someone called us and told us, you know, your dad is not well, it's not good, and blah blah blah. And I remember like just being paralyzed, just feeling paralyzed. I couldn't leave the house. And that's when the following week, after the weekend was gone and I had been in the house for the whole weekend, my phone was off, I wasn't making any calls. I asked myself, why is this such a big deal? Like, why did my body react like this? Monday is when I realized that I was experiencing everybody's anxiety. And so many times you might feel like there's something, but you can't put your finger on it. It's probably your sibling somewhere in the corner of the world going through something. But because you're so connected, you can feel it.
Yeah.
But then you don't know, probably because you don't talk or for some reason they didn't tell you. You can't figure it out. So that's why it's so important to learn how to process emotions. And that's why the work that we do is so important. From wherever it's coming from, it doesn't matter. If you learn how to process, first of all, to be present so that you can know this is mine and this is not. And then how you can release it from your system so that now you don't take on other people's anxieties and act from it. Because if I had left that house, probably the decisions I would have made and the things I would have done outside of the house would have been influenced by all this anxiety that wasn't mine.
And actually, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how when anxiety rears its head, it's not saying, hey, I'm anxiety. It is, I'm feeling very uncomfortable.
Yes.
So it could be that how you communicate with the first person that you see, you're short with them, or you're not in a calm state of mind, so you're not necessarily expressing yourself calmly, or you withdraw altogether in order to just deal with the burden of it. And as you're talking, I also remember, especially when my parents were unwell, it was such an anxious time for me, because I don't think I even had the mental space to think about all the eventualities that were really playing out in my mind. It's like subconsciously, what if this happens? What if this happens? What's going to happen? Just being worried, being so worried, and also dealing with a kind of grief, there's so many emotions. It's like anxiety is the root, and then all these other emotions also play out.
Or it's the front face of all the others. It's like, let me represent you all.
So, so it's important for people to understand that, be able to just give themselves the space, and this is the work that we do in our coaching, to help people become aware of anxiety. It is the front face, it is the root, and once you address that, then you're just opening up the space for healthier communications, healthier behaviors, like a truly nurturing family unit, which is what family really is all about. Family can be the biggest gift, or it could be the biggest source of distress as well. And that's just reality, Thank you for joining us on this episode on anxiety. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about triangulation and understanding how anxiety contributes to triangulation. Don't forget to subscribe, share this content with everybody that you believe it will help, that you think would be helped by it. And until the next time, in all that you do, don't forget to go out there and be